The Shark Deck.
Hello and welcome to Palace Intrigue. I am your host, Mark Francis. Saturday is the coronation of King Charles. Please note that this episode serves as the episode we would normally publish on Saturday morning. We'll have an episode on Saturday afternoon recapping the events of the day. The New York Times writes, on Saturday morning, Charles, Philip, Arthur, George, Mountbatten, Windsor will leave Buckingham Palace in a carriage drawn by 6 horses, take a slightly circuitous route through central London and arrive at Westminster Abbey a little before 11 a.m. for a ceremony mostly unchanged over the course of a millennium. Once inside, he will sit on the coronation chair, which is more than 700 years old and will temporarily house a block of Scottish sandstone known as the Stone of Destiny. He will put on, at some point, a 200-year-old cloak that is woven from gold cloth, embroidered with roses, thistles, and shamrocks, and lined with red silk. He will be presented to the congregation, which will shout, "God save King Charles." He will be anointed with holy oil from a 12th century spoon and handed an orb which symbolizes authority derived from God, and a scepter which represents power. The Archbishop of Canterbury will place St. Edward's crown, which is more than 350 years old, made of solid gold and set with ruby, amethyst, sapphire, garnet, topaz, and tourmaline, on his head. If this blend of ancient religious and political symbolism is impenetrable to the average viewer, that is kind of the point. When it comes to British coronations, anachronism is a feature, not a bug. The ceremony itself begins at 11 a.m. London time, 6 a.m. US Eastern Daylight Time. The day begins at 6 a.m. London when coronation viewing areas will open along the main procession route. At 7:15, Westminster Abbey guests will begin arriving at security checkpoints in Victoria Tower Gardens. At 9 a.m., the congregation will be seated inside Westminster Abbey. Between 9:30 and 10:45, coronation guests, including the royal family, heads of state and former prime ministers, are scheduled to arrive. At 9:45, the sovereign's escort of the household cavalry will prepare to assemble for the King's procession from Buckingham Palace. At 10:20, the King and Queen will travel from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach. Charles will travel with Queen Camilla from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey as part of what is known as the King's Procession. The procession stretches to just 1.3 miles, about a quarter of the length of the Queen Elizabeth's version. In the Golden Stage Coach, the King and Queen will travel the route of Parliament Square along Whitehall around Trafalgar Square, through Admiralty Arch and down the Mall back to Buckingham Palace. More than 6,000 members of the armed forces will take part on the day of the coronation, the largest military ceremonial operation for 70 years, staging gun salutes and a fly-past and parading in the processions. Some 4,000 soldiers, aviators and other military personnel from across the UK and the Commonwealth will accompany Charles and Camilla on their return coronation procession. Flanking the roads will be more than 1,000 route liners from the British Army, RAF and Royal Navy. The King and Queen will be travelling in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, a carriage with modifications such as air conditioning and electric windows. Hugo Vickers told Good Morning Britain, "The King will arrive at 10:53 a.m. It will be a 7-minute procession, not as long as the Queen's procession inside the Abbey. The first thing that happens really is what's called the recognition, which is when he is shown to all 4 corners of the Abbey to make sure historically that they've got the right man. But in a way also for the different people in the Abbey to call out, 'God save the King,' which shows that you are accepting him, and we're seeing that all along." At 11, the main event, the coronation, which will last just over an hour. Inside the Abbey, Charles will be seated in the coronation chair, or Edward's chair, as he will be holding the sovereign's scepter, a gold rod with amethyst, mond, diamonds, rubies, spinels, and emeralds, which represents control over the nation. He will also have the sovereign's orb, a golden globe with a cross on top. Charles will be asked during the ceremony if he will govern the UK and other nations of the Commonwealth with law and justice, and if he will maintain Christianity in the nation. Charles will also be anointed with chrism oil that was made in Jerusalem in March, using olives harvested from 2 groves on the Mount of Olives at the Monastery of Mary Magdalene and the Monastery of the Ascension. The King will then be blessed and consecrated by the Archbishop before having St. Edward's crown, a solid gold headpiece adorned by over 400 gemstones, including rubies and sapphires, placed on his head. Camilla will be crowned with Queen Mary's crown, which has been reset with Cullinan 3, 4, and 5 diamonds from Queen Elizabeth II's personal jewellery collection. The crown will later be replaced by the imperial state crown before the end of the ceremony. Once Charles has been crowned, he has requested for Greek Orthodox music by the Byzantine Chant Ensemble to be played during the service as a nod to his late father, Prince Philip, who was born in Greece to the German House of Glücksburg and was a prince to both Greece and Denmark. Following this, musical theatre titan Andrew Lloyd Webber has been commissioned to compose the Coronation Anthem, one of 12 pieces the King has personally chosen. There are more than 50 people participating in the ceremony, including representatives from orders of chivalry, the military, and wider public life. For the processions into Westminster Abbey, faith leaders and faith representatives. Representatives from the King's realms, flags of each realm, will be carried by national representatives accompanied by the Governors-General and Prime Ministers. The King is monarch of the UK and 14 overseas realms. Cadet Warrant Officer Elliot Tyson Lee of the Royal Air Force Air Cadets, bearing the flag of the United Kingdom ahead of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his wife Ashgata Murty. The procession of the King and the Queen. The Marquess of Anglesey, the Duke of Westminster, the Earl of Caledon, and the Earl of Dundee lead the procession and carry the standards of the quarterings of the Royal Arms and standards of the Principality of Wales. Francis Dymoke carrying the royal standard instead of being the King's champion at a coronation banquet on horseback like his ancestors. Admiral Sir Tony Radican, Chief of the Defence Staff, acting as Lord High Constable of England, an office held for the day only. Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, Earl of Errol as Lord High Constable of Scotland, Earl of Crawford and Balcarr, the Deputy to the Great Steward of Scotland, the Prince of Wales. The procession to the altar carrying the Queen's consort regalia, Barrister Baroness Helena Kennedy of the Shores carrying the Queen's consort's rod with dove, General Sir Patrick Sanders carrying the Queen's consort sceptre with cross, Duke of Wellington carrying Queen Mary's crown, Right Reverend and Right Honourable the Lord Chartres carrying the Queen's consort ring. The procession to the altar carrying the King's regalia, General Sir Gordon Messenger, the Governor of H.M. Tower of London, carrying St. Edward's crown as Lord High Steward of England, former MI5 Chief Baroness Elizabeth Manningham Bueller carrying St. Edward's staff, the Duke of Buccleuch and Queensberry carrying the sovereign sceptre with cross, former children's TV presenter and now author and peer, Baroness Floella Benjamin carrying the sovereign sceptre with dove. Dame Elizabeth Anawu carrying the orb, the keeper of the jewel house, Brigadier Andrew Jackson carrying the sovereign's ring, Petty Officer Amy Taylor carrying the sword of offering and representing servicemen and women as a Royal Navy Petty Officer, a tribute to the King's military career, Lord Hastings and the Earl of Loudon carrying the spurs, Lord President of the Council Penny Mordaunt carrying the sword of state, Air Chief Marshal the Lord Peach carrying the sword of mercy, the katana, General the Lord Richards of Hurstmonceux carrying the sword of spiritual justice, General the Lord Houghton of Richmond carrying the sword of temporal justice, participating in the act of recognition when the King is presented to the congregation at the start of the service, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Baroness Valerie Amos, Lady Elish Angiolini, George Cross holder Christopher Finney, the chair of the Victoria Cross and George Cross Association, presenting the coronation regalia to the King and chosen on the advice of government, Lord Carrington, Lord Great Chamberlain, presenting the spurs, Lord Syed Kamal presenting the armels, Baroness Gilliam Merrim presenting the robe royal, the Most Reverend John McDowell, the Church of Ireland Archbishop of Armagh presenting the orb, Lord Narendra Patel presenting the ring, Lord Singh of Wimbledon presenting the coronation glove, the Most Reverend Mark Strange, Bishop of Moray, Ross and Caithness and Episcopal Primus of Scotland presenting the sovereign sceptre with cross, the Most Reverend Andrew John, the Archbishop of Wales presenting the sovereign sceptre with dove, the Archbishop of Canterbury performing the crowning with St. Edward's crown, presenting the regalia to the Queen Consort and chosen on the advice of government, the Right Reverend Rose Hudson Wilkin, the Bishop of Dover, presenting the Queen's Consort's rod with dove, the Right Reverend and Right Honourable Lord Chartres, presenting the Queen's Consort's sceptre with cross, Brigadier Andrew Jackson, the keeper of the jewel house at the H.M. Tower of London, presenting the Queen's Consort ring, the Archbishop of Canterbury performing the crowning with Queen Mary's crown. At 2 p.m. London time, Charles and Camilla will depart Westminster Abbey in the Gold Stage coach and undertake the coronation procession, a 1.3-mile journey back to Buckingham Palace. Members of the public are likely to line the streets of the procession route to catch a glimpse of the newly crowned monarch. Palace Intrigue will be right back. Hey, I'd like to tell you about a new sponsor of ours just in time for the coronation, and that's ExpressVPN. Now, ExpressVPN is an app you use when you're online that creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so hackers can't steal your data. It's something you should always be using when you go online in public places like cafes, hotels, airports, basically anywhere that's not your network. But there's something else that's really cool about using a VPN. Have you ever tried to watch TV from a foreign country and it says, sorry, this content is only available to users within that country? Well, a VPN can give you access to almost every country in the world as if you were there. That means you can watch sporting events from around the world, local TV from another country, and here's the big thing, access to UK TV for the Coronation. It's almost as good as being there. So all you do is fire up the app, go to your website of choice, and it's all there easy and quickly. ExpressVPN works on laptops, mobiles, any device. Secure your online data today and watch TV from around the world with ExpressVPN. Now go to expressvpn.com/palace and get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/palace, expressvpn.com/palace.
I'm Nina Hobson, ex-police detective from the UK. I've worked on every crime mentionable, from murder to kidnap to stalking to fraud. When I left the force, I launched my own investigations firm that soon became a global operation. I'm also a single mother of 2 to 2 members of my team, my son Harrison and daughter Amy. Every week, we'll be getting first-hand accounts from psychological experts, operatives, former criminals, actual victims of the crimes that we investigate, and of course, my very own flesh and blood. From Storic Media, you're listening to Codename Siren, a true crime podcast. Available on YouTube and all major podcast platforms.
The Guardian took a look at some of the clothes Charles will wear. The ceremony will see the king laid in a heavy shimmering gold cloth, with the oldest item being the imperial mantle spun from gold, silver and silk thread, with a gold bullion fringe and gold clasp, and dating back to the opulent coronation of George IV in 1821. The simplest vestment will be a colobium sindonis, a white linen shift-like tunic and a plain collar fastened with a single button, intended to represent a priest's alb and worn after the sacred moment of anointing. Its simplicity is designed to represent the divesting of all world vanity to stand before God. Charles has decided to wear the same one as his grandfather George VI in 1937. Over the top of this will be placed the super tunica, a full-length sleeved gold coat which was made in 1911 for King George V and has been used in every coronation since, although it has changed little in design since medieval coronations and is based on priestly and religious vestments. Also known as the close pole of cloth of gold, the front feature an embroidered band with spiral threads that take the shape of leafy stems using gold work technique. Over this will be placed the floor-length cloak of the imperial mantle or robe royal. The cloth of gold is woven with roses, thistles, shamrocks, crowns, eagles, and fleur-de-lis, while the gold clasp is in the shape of an eagle, a recurring symbol in coronation regalia. William will play a role in the service by entering the coronation theatre to assist with placing the robe on his father. The girdle, also known as the coronation sword belt, is made of cloth of gold and embroidered in gold thread with arabesques and scrolls. It is lined with dark red silk and a gold buckle stamped with national emblems, roses, thistles, and shamrocks, and a gold clip for attaching the jewelled sword of offering in place. During the service, the sword belt is placed around the super tunica, with the jewelled sword of offering then girded or fastened at the sovereign's waist. Although normally a new girdle and glove would be made, Charles has opted to reuse those made for his grandfather in 1937 in the interests of sustainability and efficiency. The white leather glove or gauntlet is made for the right hand and worn to hold the sovereign's scepter during the crowning. Its large cuff is embroidered with gilt metal thread, wire and spangles in the form of national emblems. Charles will also be given a stole royal, also known as the coronation stole, a long, narrow, embroidered band of gold silk that goes around the shoulders on top of the super tunica, mirroring outfits worn by a priest or bishop. Please stay tuned for a test on all of that. We'll watch the coronation in the morning and check in with you on Saturday afternoon. And there you have it. If you'd like to email us, our address is thepalaceintrigue@gmail.com. Please follow us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or your favorite app of choice. I'm Mark Francis. My thanks to John McDermott. This is Palace Intrigue and good times.
I'm Johnny Mac, host of Daily Comedy News. Do you like the little Letterman homage there on the music bed? Yeah, start your mornings with a quick 10-minute recap of late night, not Dave, all late night, And the latest on Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, John Mulaney, Tig Notaro, Eliza Schlesinger, Amy Schumer, Joe Rogan, Mark Maron, all your favorite comedians. It's Daily Comedy News. It's an easy way to start your morning, and I promise I'll keep it clean. Daily Comedy News, wherever you get your shows.